meetings along the way. Whom shall we meet and how shall we engage with them? I would say use every opportunity to engage with others. On the bus, at the checkout, across the garden fence, at social gatherings, whilst watching cricket, waiting for the car to be ready, or for the kids or the grandkids to come out of school. Be ready to filter and don't allow yourself to spend time with lost causes who can waste your time and demotivate you. It isn't necessary. Win some, lose some. So what? There are plenty of others to talk to. When striking up a conversation, rather than allowing yourself to be sidelined by others into their favourite non-topic, work on your own brand of small talk and have your favourite questions on the tip of your tongue. How do you feel about Britain's involvement in Afghanistan? What do you make of this latest thing with the MPs, this expenses scam? Who do you think is going to get us out of this latest economic mess, etc., etc.? How, what, why type questions, because then the other person has to string a few words together at least, as opposed to asking, do you, are you, have you type questions, which will require a yes-no answer. Now, I suppose I'm basically an optimist because I prefer to look for hopeful signs, good examples of people rising above the circumstances and looking for where there can be cooperation with and between individuals, groups and societies. When meeting with people in this manner, we can demonstrate to them the reasons which make their goals part of our overall objective. Ultimately, we're looking for enough people who relate to our aims. We're not just looking for members for the Socialist Party. Eventually, when enough people concur broadly with our aims, when we have a good majority of like-minded people, we shall have to accept the growing number by consensus, not by paperwork. Can you imagine when the millionth hopeful submits their application to head office? The membership committees will really have their hands full. No, by this time, the ballot box will be telling of a new era, of an impending revolution. I'd like to mention a few of my long list of good examples so that you understand what I'm talking about in relation to that. No particular order, just as I thought of them. And the first on my list is the Transition Initiative. Who's heard of the Transition Initiative? How many people have heard of the Transition Initiative? Nobody. I'm really surprised. Okay, well, the Transition Initiative only started a few years ago in Ireland, actually. It spread to the UK. It's separate communities worldwide now, committed to taking care of their... it's a loose association, really, of separate communities. And they are wanting to take care of their own futures using... It's a peak oil, post-oil society mentality. And they're looking at alternative building methods, alternative energy sources, growing food, and in a lot of cases they're bypassing national and local governments as well. It's a kind of people power in action, I would say. Communities given up waiting for authorities or governments or corporations to tackle the impending problems of peak oil and climate change, and they're working together just to get on with it and do it. And it includes everything you can think of related to ecology or permaculture, whatever. And it's growing really fast. I looked last week again, and it's just in so many places. And it's as far now as Australia and Chile, and there's towns all over it in this country which have got various initiatives going, okay? My next good example is the World Social Forum. I know that you've all heard of the World Social Forum. It's a global network, and it includes many people from the underclasses who are building connections, learning strategies, and empowering communities. It came out of the backlash to the World Economic Forum, and the World Social Forum's focus basically is anti-global corporate power. And it's a huge network now, committed to putting people before profit and developing society democratically people endeavouring to take control of their lives against all odds. Next one I've put is the open source internet community, and I'm speaking to a few people here today. I know a lot of you are really quite well aware of that. But again, it's a worldwide community of people working together, the vast majority without pay, to bring the best computer technology to anyone and everyone for free, because they believe in open access. And I'm not the best qualified person to speak to, but Dave would certainly tell you more about that if you're interested to know. And then there are also masses of, you could call them green, ecology, environmentalist movements, both local and worldwide. There's anti-war movements, there are peace movements, there are social justice movements, there are anti-globalization movements, there are anti-neoliberal policy groups. You name it, they're there. But I think that these people, all these different groups, equate to a growing awareness globally that the problems need fixing by mass movements of people, because governments, authorities and corporations won't do it. In some developed countries, the last few years you've seen a considerable increase in the numbers of farmers' markets. Farmers choosing to go directly to the customer and vice versa. Why? The farmers are fighting against the mammoth corporations, trying to force them out of business, and the customers are giving massive support to a more local, grow local, eat fresh, use less fuel movement. People choosing to avoid the corporate monopolies in order to take better care of the world and their own environment, and making a statement to elected, supposedly representative governments. We're talking here, in just these few examples, of millions of people worldwide intent on doing something to determine the direction of their own lives, in opposition to the status quo, and with no expectation that governments will heed them without they first pile on the pressure. I could cite more of what I consider good examples of people working together against the system for more wholesome communities, but I'm going to end my list with Cuba. I read recently that since the Rio Climate Change Agreement meeting in 1992, Cuba was the only country in the world to follow up on proposed action. It achieved all the goals it set, and in 2006 became the only country in the world to meet the criteria for sustainable development according to the World Wildlife Fund for Nature, demonstrating that it is possible. This is not to offer Cuba as an example of socialism, please don't misinterpret me, but as an example that international agreements can be met. What I really want to show here is that it's negative stories that generally fill the media. But for each of these negatives can be found a positive if you look in the right places. The inbuilt motivation of humans to work together and assist one another is very much in evidence, certainly in the examples I've just given. And voluntary cooperation can't be forced, after all. Capitalism is built on coercion, active and passive. This is another facet of the capitalist system we're at odds with, as are many who would not call themselves socialists. But socialist society, by definition, is a cooperative society. A bit of an aside here, I worked for years with teenagers who were variously labelled as slow learners, remedials, or having learning difficulties. So excuse me if I seem to labour a point here and there, but I want to say something about conversations, and that conversation is a two-way process.